us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome, everyone. We'll get started by approving our agenda on page 2. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I make the motion to the Board of Education approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll move forward with our agenda as printed and go right to the superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we get to start off today on a very high note and do our PAC Advisory Committee awards, Parent Advisory Committee awards. And Dr. Janine Matson-Gearhart will begin and do the honors.
I'm not sure where to stand anymore.
Well, the podium can pick up the sound the best, so.
Okay. I'll be short. Good afternoon. It is nice to see everybody again. I always get a little nervous, so forgive me here. This is the time of the year where we recognize teachers who are teachers of students with disabilities. And what I would like for you to know is that the Parent Advisory Committee selects the very best of the students who are the teachers who have been nominated. So typically they're nominated either by another colleague, a parent, or a student. So this year we have 2 nominations and 2 winners. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to both of our teachers. Jessica Jeffrey over at Central Middle. She is new to us this year, and she was nominated and is going to be receiving the award. So congratulations, Jessica. I'll have them both come up in a second, okay? And then, Thank you very much for your service, and we're really glad that you're here in this district, so thanks for that. We also have another teacher who is nominated and has won, Casey Batters. And Casey is a teacher here, right here at Central High School, and she was nominated by a student, and the mom of the student is Sarah Baird, who's also one of our representatives on the Parent Advisory Committee. So Sarah, you don't have to say anything, but just give a little wave so we know who you are. And thank you for your service. Sarah's been on for quite a long time representing Portage, so we do thank you for your service as well. I'd like the ladies to come on up, if you wouldn't mind, and we have plaques and we have flowers. So Jessica, Casey. Anne has your flowers. I want to say thank you very much. Yeah, we appreciate you, and your students appreciate you. We've got
Thank you.
that one. And Casey.
There's a box just.
Wonderful. Thank you very much as well. I've known you a lot longer than, so I'm very proud of you. Thank you. And typically the board wants to say thank you, so if you want, we could hold those things.
I'll just give it to my husband.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do that. Anything around?
Sure.
Janine, is there anything from the nominating comments that you could share, or do you, I don't know if you have anything with you or not?
I do not.
Okay, that's all right, that's fine, that's fine.
Congratulations.
Thank you much for everything you do.
Congratulations.
Thank you for everything you do for our kids. We appreciate it.
Congratulations for all your hard work.
Thank you very much.
You're awesome. Thank
Thank
you for all you do.
you. Congrats.
Thank you.
Miss Senior. Ex-senior. No, you're graduated. Great. And who's this one?
My sister Becca.
Okay. Oh, you're gonna be really scared. Do you want to say anything about Miss Banners?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on up here and say something.
If you don't know my name, I'm Megan Baird, the one who graduated from high school. Miss Batters has been a wonderful young lady who's always been there for me since freshman year. She's fun, energetic, nice, and kind of a bit of a jokester. she's been amazing around me, and she is one of my favorite teachers. I love you.
I love you too, Maggie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Becca Baird, and my thing says to my daughters that I love her, and she's kind of really silly sometimes, and I call her Fredders, and she calls me Frecker.
This is true.
It's really funny because we named Fred's around at our school. It's really funny. But I got the secret of my favorite teacher bios, even Mrs. Jason behind her, and that's I'm going to miss them if I graduate, and I really love them in my heart. For real.
Thanks, ladies, and thank you, board.
Thank you very much, and how courageous of these two young ladies to come up and speak before this, the board and this crowd, so thank you. We all know you probably have other important things to do tonight, so feel free to walk out anytime. We've got a lot, not you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
So our second item on the superintendent's report, unless anyone wants to make any comments there.
That was the best.
That always is nice. Is, Johnny Edwards is here to do a bond project update.
So I didn't know I was set up to come follow that. Had I known that, I would have asked to have gone first. Such touching to hear from our students and their appreciation for our staff. My bond update will be brief. First, I just wanted to, is about the groundbreaking ceremonies. Wanted to thank the Board of Education as well as our community for their support in our two groundbreaking ceremonies. We held the Central Elementary groundbreaking on May 23rd, and then earlier today we held the Haverhill ceremony. Both ceremonies were well attended by parents, staff, and students at both schools, and it was great to see all of our school community be a part of those festivities. Secondly, we'd love to inform the board and our community that the Haverhill Construction Review Document meeting will occur this Friday, and this is where we go through hundreds and hundreds of pages worth of construction documents. The second, which will be held on Friday, June 26th. After we approve internally those 2 page turns, then the Haverhill package will go out to bid. Thirdly, we're going to have a meeting with the Haverhill residents in preparation for the Haverhill construction project. We have to do some utility work on Manhattan Street. The city requires us to meet with the neighbors and make them aware of the direct impact of their access to utility services. So we will hold an informational meeting for residents in the Haverhill community on Wednesday, June 14th at 5:30 in the gymnasium. The purpose of the meeting is to explain the construction process and answer any questions the residents might have. A mailing is going out this week to inform the neighbors of the informational meeting, and the project for this element for Haverhill will start the week of June 26. Fourth, in terms of bids, the Central Elementary bid package has gone out. OAK, our construction management firm, is hosting a pre-bid meeting next week with all interested contractors. The bid opening will occur on June 21st. We plan to bring a recommendation to the Board of Education at our July 24th meeting. Also, we plan to bring a footings and foundation recommendation for Haverhill Elementary at the July 24th meeting. At the August Board of Education meeting, we plan to bring the remainder of the Haverhill construction package to the board for approval. And finally, tonight, just wanted to just speak to a clarification about our bond project overall. I want to take a moment just to clarify the scope of our bond projects. We remain on course to complete our elementary construction projects. Central L and Haverhill will open in the fall of 2025. We expect to be able to complete 4 new buildings with the funds from our 2021 bond. Woodland is scheduled to be our 3rd school. We will start the design process for Woodland in the fall, and we will name the 4th school in the future. We're staying true to the educational specifications and staying true to our designs and building the future of learning. So that concludes my update for this board meeting. At our next board meeting, I hope to bring some pictures so you can see pictures of the groundbreaking ceremonies as well as some construction update photos as well. So I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board.
All right, thank you. Ready to move into board education?
We better do it.
Okay, we should do this. So this is the last of the PA 48 reports for this year. This is a report that is required by law to be presented to the board various times during the school year, and Dr. Jensenius and Dr. Pasco are here to present.
Good evening, Superintendent Bylaw and Board Trustees. We're here tonight to present you the final 22-23 update on our PA 48 goals as required by Public Act 48, Section 104A, which requires districts to implement a benchmark assessment system aligned to state standards for the purpose of measuring student proficiency in both reading and mathematics. In addition, we must present those results to the Board of Ed. And we did that 2 times already. We did in our fall screener. We came back in the winter, and now we're here to talk about final results. We believe that benchmark assessment evidence can be used to monitor and evaluate patterns and trends in academic performance, which helps us to identify effective instructional programs to help address any gaps that we see. We believe it can provide guidance for standardizing or adjusting our curriculum and instruction across all grade levels, schools in our district. However, as we've stated before, we will not use the benchmark assessment data to make high-stakes instructional decisions about individual student learning. PPS will continue the use of formative assessment process as a powerful practice embedded in teaching and learning to continuously observe where our students are at in order to modify instruction. Okay, so we have 2 parts tonight. Dr. Kelly Jensenius is by my side. She's going to cover some of the elementary data. I'll cover some of the middle school, and then we'll wrap it up by taking any comments or questions that you may have, okay? So I'll hand it over to Dr. J.
All right, thanks. Okay, so the table we'll first look at tonight is our elementary math and reading screener data. And we just completed our spring screening cycle, so we just fresh off the presses there, this data. This data is not from a cohort, so these students can be in either data set to be counted. And meeting benchmark changes by time of the year for both Fastbridge and Acadians because they are curriculum-based measures, so you see a moving target. The goal was to get K through 8 to have 80% of students to benchmark by the end of the school year in both reading and math. So we're going to start by looking at our math data. We see that our 2nd and 3rd grade making the largest gains from the beginning of the year to now. We have been anchoring our work in the formative assessment process throughout the year. We have had 3 teachers per elementary school working alongside instructional coach Jessica Winstanley and our regional FAME, which is our formative assessment for Michigan educators coach. So we have a coach that works alongside with her. Begin to not only better understand that formative assessment process, but how it can directly relate to supporting mathematics. So we're really trying to tie all that together. A few weeks ago, the curriculum instruction and assessment instructional team worked with the elementary principals, and we were identifying number sense routines as a path towards continuing to grow teacher practice and student outcomes in math. So we're looking at number sense to really help us grow that practice for our kids. This work will be facilitated through the formative assessment process and supported again by Jessica Winstanley and the FAME facilitators in each of our buildings. So we have a plan here to keep moving this forward. We will also begin to incorporate this work into our professional learning sessions throughout the 23-24 school year so that we become more systematic in that training. We already have grade level teams revising math unit plans for next year, and we are using that continuous improvement process to find additional opportunities for training to further building our mathematical understanding, especially in developing that number sense at the K-5 level. So we have work in progress there. If you start to look into our reading data, you start to notice there is movement in a majority of the grade levels. The elementary grade level teams have been intentionally setting goals based on their data starting from that fall screening cycle. Each goal is supported by the team developing an instructional routine tied to priority standards. Kindergarten, third grade, and fifth grade have reached that goal of 80% meeting benchmark, and fourth grade was very close at that 78. Our first grade and second grade are the grades we continue to monitor closely, and we focus our resources and support instructional coaching. The one thing that these overall scores do not highlight are the individual areas where we have intentionally intervened or coached. So for example, in our first grade, our whole word read measurement went from 59% in the fall to 88% meeting benchmark. You don't see this in this overall composite score. This means that their basic phonics skills showed us that they are developing that automaticity with whole words reading. So they're really building up some skills. We're not seeing it quite yet here. This is a critical skill we target with our instructional routines, and it's just that one component of the complex skill of learning how to read. This piece of data lets us know we are on the right track, but still have work to do in those other key areas. Overall, on page 4 in your report, you will find achievement data by student group, which for the most part shows students trending in the right direction, but we have much improvement needed. The work at our Tier 1 level in both math and reading has been focused on the priority standards and the use of formative assessment process. So this will be our continued focus, as mentioned above, along with providing targeted interventions through our MTSS system of support. So we know our groups need that support, so we're going to really be targeting in through our tiers of support in the building. But what I really want to celebrate is in reading to highlight that we are proud to have over 150 elementary teachers enrolled in Letters Professional Development, which is really this PD anchored on the science of reading. I think I talked about that last time, but we have over 150 teachers. It's amazing to have that many teachers engaged in hundreds of hours of learning, and they are coming out excited and connected in that. And it's really been a game changer for the teachers and the success of our kids. And we look forward to continuing to train our teachers as we adopt our new curricular resources, YouFly and Fish Tank, which are also directly aligned with the science of reading. So we're seeing some good things coming together. And as you have heard us discuss over the past year, our attention has been moving towards a more connected K-12 lens, facilitated through the continuous improvement process. So Dr. Pasco is now going to highlight 6 through 8 data with some of those connected moves we're engaging in over the next school year. Okay.
Great. All right. So this table focuses on middle school math and reading screening data. As we discussed in the winter meeting benchmark, that changes by the time of year for Fastbridge, and the benchmark is a curriculum-based measure as well as an adaptive assessment. So we use these measures to determine where our students are at as a whole and what instructional moves we need to make. This is because they are screeners, essentially a snapshot in time. And so when I say adaptive, that's any type of assessment or any type of screener that's tailored specifically to each student based on their performance on previous items on an assessment or a screener. So the test or the assessment or the screener in this case will adapt to where students are based off of their responses. So I know we use that word sometimes, but I don't know if we always define it. So when we say that, that's what we mean. So in math, we continue to see our 6th grade trend downwards from the fall to the spring, whereas 7th grade had an increase from 50% to 61%. And essentially, 8th grade kind of remained flat around 60%. We have hired Laura Cleesby. She's a longtime PPS math teacher out of West Middle School as our 6th through 8th grade math coach. So she'll be working over the summer, looking at our data. She's going to dig into the FastBridge a little more, our screening tool. She'll begin to set up kind of her plan of action as a coach for the fall over the summer months. So we're really excited about that. She'll also be facilitating our MEC tutors that will be getting through AmeriCorps. So she'll be orchestrating that whole thing this summer, as well as we move forward. So we know that'll be a positive step in the right direction for student success. So we're glad to have her on board, part of our CIA team, to help support and address some of what we're seeing at the middle school math level. In reading, we see our 6th grade stay about the same, and an increase in both 7th and 8th grade. So we're still falling short of that benchmark of 80% that we set coming into the year. So similarly to what Dr. J talked about at elementary, this is just overall data, summarizing all schools within a certain level. When you begin to look a little deeper, you do see some positive improvements occurring. So in one of our middle schools, the 6th and 7th grade teams, they implemented a specific instructional routine based off of the student data that they were seeing, and they saw and realized an 8 to 9% improvement in those respective grade levels, and they got up to 78% and 80% in the 2 grade levels. Respectively. So, for example, this particular school was focused on multi-syllabic words, and that was an instructional reading routine that they put in place over, the last few months, we would say?
About 2.5 months.
Mackenzie? 2.5 months, and we've already seen those type of gains. So they kind of piloted one specific instructional strategy, and that's probably one that we're going to implement across the board at the middle schools as we look at other approaches in terms of those instructional reading routines. So we are trying to respond to the data the best we can. On page 5 in your report, you can also find achievement data, as Kelly had mentioned too, around different student groups or groups of students. And we didn't really see significant improvements there, but you have those groups of students data. So to meet our goals, we're in the process of building a rigorous middle school curriculum based on new priority standards, which will be implemented starting this fall and throughout the year. We're also adopting all the way up to 8th grade that fish tank ELA curriculum. So Dr. Mackenzie Sheehan, Jessica Wynn-Stanley, Courtney Huff, our instructional coach, they've all done a wonderful job looking at that K-8 alignment. And I know you'll hear more about that as the presentations go on and well into next year. And we'll talk a little bit about what that is. So Fish Tank ELA focuses on ensuring that students have regular practice with complex text and academic language. As students progress through the Fish Tank ELA curriculum, they build on the strategies learned in previous grades to tackle increasingly complex texts and tasks, and there's more to that. But it's important to know that social emotional skills are integrated into every lesson as students analyze different characters, motivations, and reactions throughout historical and contemporary events. And again, there's other folks that will come up here and really tell you a lot about Fish Tank, but that's kind of the gist of what we're looking at in a 6 through 8 perspective. Another exciting change will be at the second hour of 6th grade ELA. That's going to be dedicated to content literacy, as we presented maybe earlier on in the year as we were making some shifts with that double block of 6th grade ELA. So the 6th grade teachers, they've been working hard developing their content literacy courses to launch this fall, again, with the help of a lot of our team. Dr. Sheehan, Courtney Huss been involved in that. I know Jessica's been in the room. So those folks are to thank because they really have helped lead those teams. The new course targets disciplinary literacy throughout project-based learning, and it fulfills the second hour of that 6th grade ELA. So all 6th graders next year will experience 4 different 9-week courses, and I just want to kind of give you a snapshot of what those look like in those core subject areas. So for ELA content literacy, they're thinking of labeling it mysteries solved, and I don't know if these are true or not just yet, Kens. Are these? Okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So in this course, Students will discover the phenomenon of why mystery novels and stories keep readers engaged. They'll do that in small group, whole group discussions. They'll construct a set of shared criteria for highly effective mysteries. They'll work in teams to write mystery stories that incorporate those elements identified. And then they'll share these stories by developing and publishing their mystery stories in a variety of ways. So graphic novels to dramatic performances, which will be interesting. Then the social studies, content literacy, it'll be more of an entrepreneurial focus. So starting a business. So students will work in teams to develop a business concept. They'll do some market research and competitive analysis. I like this course, this is cool. Yeah, create a realistic financial plan, pitch their business to an audience, and then create a business plan, and then they'll learn the key mathematical skills, stretch their natural entrepreneurial skills, and develop competence in areas of tech, communication, and collaboration. So that's going to be a pretty neat integration there with literacy and social studies. In math, I'm not sure if I think this was the one in question.
working on the
Shipping container designs,
Yes.
title is being worked on in parentheses. But essentially they'll embrace the sustainable building movement. We'll research shipping containers and their purposes, choose or create a client to design a shipping container, anywhere from a multimillionaire to someone who wants a play structure to a pet groomer with a small piece of property. So a big range. Using mathematical and peer review, they'll create a blueprint and build a budget to present that to their client. And then they'll build a model to put on display, just as you would see on like HGTV.
And we might
And
bring
all
a
those
shipping
cool shows.
container to put in front of your office.
Oh,
We might have one on.
Nice.
You know, yeah.
Okay. And then for science, content literacy, that module or those lessons are kind of under the umbrella of eco-writers. So each student will partner with a child. This is actually really cool. Each student will partner with a child in one of our PPS K through 12 classrooms. Okay. K2. What did I say? 12? Minus the 1. Write an individual children's book about environmental issues based off their interests. Then they'll work to develop a fictional children's book about the animal and its ecosystem using ecological concepts to drive the plot and presenting the human impacts on the environment. So that's pretty cool. Then they'll go back to their buddies in one of our PPS schools to read and present that book to their buddy, and they'll keep that forever. So I think that's pretty neat. So we've got a lot of great changes in store for our students, led by our outstanding middle school teachers and all the support from the folks in the curriculum office that are doing the work. So our instructional coaches and all those others in the CIA that are making that happen. So that's kind of the gist of where we fell, at least K through 8. Again, we're always happy to listen to comments and try to answer your questions the best we can. And again, if we don't have the answer today, we'll bring it back to the team, and then we'll get back via Mark a response on anything that we can't answer this evening.
Well, first of all, very cool work in all the things that are they look very dynamic and fun, and like kids are really going to gravitate to them. So congratulations on that. The 80% goal, nice round number, but is it the right goal?
The right goal. Tell me more about your question there.
Is it a SMART goal? Is that what you're asking, Keith?
Well, yes. For the most part, 80% was not hit. But does that mean that there was a deficiency, or that number was just too high of an expectation? Realistic.
I don't think it's too high. We always aim to hit that 80% or higher. That's always been a goal of ours. And you're shaking your head because you know that through Acadians and the work that we do. We want to hit that because if we can get 80% of our kids there, when we think about the tiers of intervention, MTSS structure, if you get 80%, your core instruction is effective, and then you're able then to intervene on the rest of the students that need even additional supports. And so when you're not hitting that 80%, and you heard us talk a lot about the core or tier 1, that's telling us we have work to do in our core work, which is, again, why we focused a lot of today's talk around what we're doing for all kids, because we're not hitting that 80%. So that means we must have a core issue we need to be addressing. And so that's where that 80% comes from.
And you guys know when we talk continuous improvement, we're talking two umbrellas. We're talking improving the culture and climate, and we're talking improving our tier 1 instruction and all the things that fall under that. So that is half of our huge focus here, because we know we got to have the settings right. We have to have the environments conducive and safe and welcoming and having those relationships and connections with kids in order for us to get to the Tier 1 instructional things and all the tiered systems with MTSS kind of built in as an integrated theme. So is it the right percentage? I mean, it's definitely something that you can, we had 3 grade levels out of all these that actually met it, and it was only in reading. So, it's something to shoot for. Like Kelly said, we always want that bar to be high, just like we do with all of our comparator data as well with MR11. So I think we'll continue to kind of set things that are out there. Are they attainable? We think that's where we want to go. So that's how we believe that it's attainable, but it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of these things that we put in place are, 3 to 5 years, talking to Courtney Huff a lot.
Yeah.
So, it's 3 to 5 years, Pasco.
It takes
And
time.
so we do. We have to be patient. We have to stick with certain things. The nice thing is we're building a lot of capacity in the CIA office, working alongside one another, which is the most important thing, trying to support teachers. We're trying to align and hear from the buildings as to what their needs are and support them through professional learning. So there's lots of branches to this work. It's not just the things that we're presenting tonight, but and people are trying and they're committed. So hopefully, as we present over the upcoming years, we'll start seeing a tick up and maybe kids will struggle less a little bit coming out of the pandemic as well. We're still seeing some of those impacts as we've seen in some of the previous reports. And so we want to set that high expectation. We want to keep the bar high. So go ahead, Ian.
Yes, so the numbers I'm looking for Black students, it's very low. So why do you guys think that the percentage is so low for Black students being the benchmark? And then at any point, do you think there should be some specialized help for Black students so that they can be, more in line with the other students? Because it just seems very out of whack.
It is very out of whack when you start looking at those subgroups on that sheet. And so part of that is too, we need to dig deeper into the number of students that represent each of those groups as well. And that's a big piece of that. But I think the work that we're doing, again, if we go back to the core work that we're doing, if we use elementary reading right now, that's the same series we've had since 2012. It's not been updated. It's not the science of reading. It's not no windows or mirrors in that work. And so I think if we start seeing, our students start seeing themselves in their text, if we start focusing on that science of reading, we're going to see an increase in that area. And yes, that other piece of the work is what else do we need to do in terms of our students that aren't seeing that growth and making sure it's the right work that we're doing there. But I think that's where we start with a better curricular resource and one that really hits their needs. And Dr. Sheehan will come up later to talk about some of the new curricular purchases we need to make because they're old. And so I think that's going to be our very first step in making change there.
Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, PA 48, relatively new. Didn't it come out of the pandemic?
Yes.
Does PA 48 go forever, or is there a time limit and then it disappears?
We'll let you know every fall.
Yeah. My observation is, I think this is really helpful. Our monitoring reports are largely focused on results. And in this report, you folks mixed in a little result, and here's what we're doing. And so it just helps me get better context.
Yeah.
So anyway, good.
Yeah. I think regardless of PA 48, 104A, we're still going to be doing this work regardless if we have to report it or not. It is nice that we can be up here and share the data so you can understand kind of where we're at and what we're trying to do to remedy some of the gaps that we have out there. And you see that with PA 48, you see it with MR11 reports. And so we're just going to continue to do that work regardless if there's a governing body that says we need to present it in different forms and fashion. We're going to just continue to do what we know is best for kids and try to improve this data regardless. So we'll see, Bo, every fall. We'll see you back in August and see what the requirements are. But if it's there, great, we'll be back presenting this. But either way, we will still have that data, and I'm sure it's you still be accessible through Superintendent Bylaw. Okay.
I knew I was going to ask questions. When is the spring benchmark done? When is it performed, test given?
We gave it the week
All the way to the
after.
end of April, right?
No, actually, it was, this is the latest we've ever given it, and it was the end of May.
Okay.
End of May.
Yeah. So
So
we've
that's a
done,
pretty accurate one for this year,
Pretty.
as far as end of year.
we did end of year this year.
Sometimes it's so early in the end of year that there's still a lot of learning going on.
Yeah, we've done it where we've been right in the window of end of the year testing, like MSTEP testing, and we thought, well, maybe this isn't a good time, right? We're burning out kids on test after test, so we backed it off to get more instructional time towards the end of the year, but then you go, are they tired? You know, again, that's why we say it's a snapshot in time. It's one piece of data, and especially as teachers start to pull that apart, and maybe there's, you know, they look at it and they're like, this isn't what this student's been doing all year long. So we don't take it as we're gonna make big wholesale changes on it, but for those individual kids, but we do take a look at it in all the data we've collected. But yes, it was very late this year, which was why we're like, we gotta get this done and get it out.
And sometimes we see winter students just not approaching it in the way we'd like them to. But not the case here. I mean,
Yeah, that's
you know, for the
different.
most part, I feel like they gave it their best in the winter in terms of effort. And so that's good.
It seems like they were relatively consistent
Yeah.
as far as hitting the benchmark and knowing that the benchmark is increasing at each standpoint, which tells me that the snapshot is generally, in general, maybe not for every student, but generally fairly accurate.
This is a good idea.
I appreciated that Ian mentioned about African-American students being so low, because you look at that and the numbers are low. And so, in addition to her question, my question was, what is currently being done to really support them? I know that we have the math coaches in place to really help with the reading. We're getting the science of reading, which is excellent, but are we really targeting to find what learning gaps are there, and how are we doing that? Could you explain?
Yeah, so at elementary, we have a reading specialist in each of our buildings. And so their job is to work with each grade level, with their PLCs, if you will, and they sit down, they analyze the data together, they look at how their kids are doing, what they're doing in their classrooms. They're starting, I would say this year has been the first real push towards more intentional coaching. We've been doing coaching collaboratives with all of our reading specialists and engagement specialists, some of our ESI coaches as well this year. So we've been training them as coaches to get into those classrooms to help our teachers see what their practices are, where they need to improve, what their kids are doing, specific kids or groups of students. And then we do data reviews at the building level, and then even tomorrow we'll have a district-wide continuous improvement. We look at all the data, we start analyzing it, we start looking especially, right, like we start pulling all that apart as a whole district, but then also individual buildings start to do that. And that continuous improvement plan starts to come from that, right? They start to say, okay, are we addressing what we need to address? What trainings do we need? What supports do we need? So it's a very much an ongoing continuous improvement piece, but we try to be systematic in it, right? Like we're not gonna say, oh, and now we're gonna try this and try that, but what is our overall that we want to accomplish, our goals, and then what are our strategies that we're going to do across, so at elementary, the 8 buildings, or 6 or 8, or however we want to pull it apart, we start doing that work. But in the buildings, then going back to that at elementary, those reading specialists sit down and they decide together with the teachers what are the as Michael talked about, what are the instructional routines that will help to target that specific area that our students are saying they need. And that's what they then put into place. They start measuring it. They've been doing performance routines. So lots of great work happening, pretty systematic. But again, I think we have some changes that need to be made that are going to have a bigger impact on our work.
We talked about formative assessment at the start.
Yeah, thank you.
Some of our best teachers are the ones that can adapt and change a lesson on the fly based off of what students are presenting. Those are the best ones that I've observed over my career. And so that's a big part of it, is is be able to determine what students are giving you in the present time, making adjustments regardless of what label is put on them. I think that's number one, and that goes right back to our tier one. We do have some reading intervention and stuff like that built in place, but I think the other part we don't talk enough about is connecting with kids and making sure that they feel valued and that they're welcomed into our environments and figuring out what's going on in their situation. Is it an attendance issue? So how can we help with that? Is it something going on outside that we need to connect them with? There's a whole mental health and SEL component that I know we talk about, but it's something that we can't lose sight of. You know, some kids just need some extra support, but we have to be willing to identify it, make connections, and then connect them to the right supports.
And I would say that work with Dr. Holly throughout this year that we've done has been a huge part of making sure those connection pieces, and then going into the fall, him coming back and continuing that work, definitely feeds into this and supports it. And I think, you know, I think that's why we're excited too in that 6th grade second hour of ELA. That idea of connecting to their learning through project-based learning, where kids are able to, you know, whatever they want, their community, their world, how they want to make those connections into their school versus what school's doing to them, what they want to bring into their learning. I think that's going to be another piece of making a huge difference for our students.
Back to Keith's point about engagement, essentially,
Yes. Yep.
you know, I mean, the list and the description of what we just read, like, that's where we need to go. More of the hands-on, more of the project-based, more of the working together, you know, not just the memorization and, you know, taking tests.
Yes.
It's working together to be able to learn some skills and then apply it to something that's real world. And hopefully the more we do that, we'll see more of that engagement. We'll be able to catch more students and start trending some of those groups of students. Because, yeah, students with disabilities, African-American students, we don't like to see that data, but we don't like to see that in 1-1 either, and we know sometimes that isn't what we'd like. So that definitely continues to be the focus, but we need to see some improvement with some of the groups that are reported and with the different labels.
I have one other question. That's okay. I'm sorry, I have a list here. This is my alley. I know what science of reading is, and I've heard you say that quite frequently, and that can be, for lack of a better term, an industry-specific term.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you would mind going ahead and explaining what that is so that those who may not have done the reading and research and so on about it.
You know, the scientific.
Well, a brief summary, if you
No, I
could.
looked at a brief summary.
Why is this so important?
Just give it-
Oh, so when you think about the science of reading, we're going to think about, well, how do I want to say it today? So when you think about, you got your phonemic awareness, it's all those things that come together in reading that kids need to have, and they need to braid together, and it can't be in isolation, right? So we can't just say, I'm going to learn how to read over here without any real context, right? So it's kind of got to come together where I'm learning how to read, but I'm really learning how to read really rich text that helps me make connections to it, so it has meaning behind it. Am I doing good?
Yeah.
Would I add to it? She's my
I've read and I've listened and I've
Really, we need
Special guest
Courtney.
seen that everyone has.
So, but I think when we think about it, it's 2 buckets, kind of.
I keep picturing my braid, my
Yeah,
little
well,
thing.
there is the rope, and we will
rope.
make sure that, that Mr. Beanlang brings you Scarbird's reading rope, so you are able to see this. But really, it's thinking about it in 2 ways. There's 2 different buckets that we try to fill. One is what Dr. Jensenius was saying, is that it's the fine little things that add up to being able to look at a word, break it apart, know the sounds, and it's that phonemic awareness and really learning those skills. And then the other is more based on language comprehension. So it's what we hear, how we interpret what someone's saying, how we express our own thoughts. And so that's a skill that grows even as adults. But we want to make sure that we're teaching both and that we're filling both buckets, because sometimes we see if one is missing, then that's when we see different
Isolated skills.
yeah, isolated skills, and we get to middle school and we don't know why they can't sound something out that's in a science text because it's bigger than they've ever seen. So really, it's coming back to all the research that's been done over the years. And if you ever heard anybody talk about the reading wars, they were talking about the science of reading versus a different type where it's kind of, let's look at the word, give it a guess, look at the picture, what do you think it is? So we will do it better justice when we come back to you next time, and we'll bring some of Courtney's graphics that
Maybe
explain it really well.
Look and learn or something for that
It's
one.
gonna be some slides, though. You asked for it, no.
My question is just, you mentioned the second language arts period for sixth grade. I'm just wondering if there's ever been any consideration to going back what the original model of language, foreign language, or world languages in middle school was, and that was, it wasn't a requirement in middle school. It's a requirement to graduate that you have a world language, but that kids who continue to need more support in reading and language arts would continue to have that second hour as an English hour as opposed to taking Spanish or French or German or whatever. Has that been discussed at all, or is that even?
I know that our world language, again, she's been involved in a lot of this, is up for the curriculum review cycle.
Yeah, they're in the first phase of their cycle right now, which is looking at all of the data. So they collected over 1,000 survey responses just from our public, from our students, from our families, to kind of get some ideas of what the expectation was to bring up those types of questions. But right now, we're just going through that data and then the research that kind of is going to be our foundation for what do we do next? Like, what are some of those questions that we have out there that we need a solidified answer to, whether or not we change our model? So right now, there's nothing on the table and no discussion around that, but in the future, there may be. It's a very good question.
To me that if you can't read English, why would you then throw a student into taking Spanish? And I know there's a school of thought out there, well, they'll understand English better if they take Spanish, but I've worked with kids who are struggling at the high school level, and they'll always say, they have trouble with English, they hate Spanish. And so it just seems like we ought to do something to better bolster their English skills and reading skills than jump to that right as a seventh grader.
So I appreciate that. And a lot of the, this content literacy will address a lot of that through that project-based. So they're gonna get more practice in ELA, no matter if it's math or science, it's going to have a heavy literacy base to it to help support the students there. And then as Dr. Sheehan said, then when we get into the world language review, we can then start looking at how does that look the same, different, what our next steps are there. So
Thanks.
a lot of great things on the docket, which is exciting. So.
One quick thing for me. One, obviously, we know this is a snapshot. It's clear you're taking excellent action in trying to get us more where we want to be. I appreciate that. You mentioned connecting with kids, and that's one thing I definitely see that helps them learn a lot more. What is our average classroom size?
At elementary, I would say,
Depends what
depends
level,
on
yeah.
the level. So we're probably, I don't have it in front of me, but we're trending pretty low average, like 23. If you average that all out, it may even be low school. Middle school, I'm not sure if I have that one.
I mean, it will vary depending on sections, high 20s to maybe low 30s. Sometimes you get to the high school, you'll have, some English 9 classes that may be in, to the mid 30s, maybe even more at times. But as you get, to the upper levels, sections end up getting, a little bit smaller. So it varies on subject and it varies on the section. Sometimes you could look at an average, but that doesn't mean anything to teachers, especially a teacher that has 37 in the classroom. The average is not going to mean anything to them because they still have that large section. So it does vary. We do our best when we do our master schedule, particularly at the secondary level, to balance the sections as much as possible, particularly at the high school. But there's lots of constraints that go up on a master schedule, particularly as we're trying to honor what students actually want to take. So we do our best to kind of balance that. So it's balancing student interest, but also class sizes at the same time. And that's challenging. And there's certain things that need to be put up on a master scheduling board as priority, as you know, which kind of dictate the rest of the schedule. So every level is a little bit different.
Looking at our elementary and middle school levels, if we're clearly struggling in these two particular areas, might be something worth considering, possibly reducing our classroom size to give the kids more direct attention so we can identify that connection is what they need to grow and improve.
Thank you. I appreciate you all listening once again and for your comments and your questions. And Like I said, anything that we need to take back to look further, we'll make sure we do that and incorporate that into future presentations and work. Kim, one more?
I have one more, I'm sorry. I see that the elementary low numbers are significantly higher than the middle school low numbers, and I'm assuming that part of that is because of missed in-person instruction for a few years. Are we seeing these numbers improve from year to year from within the cohort, or is that cohort improving?
We would have to pull that for you. I could pull that for you, yeah.
I'm just a data person, I'm sorry.
You are.
I shouldn't apologize for that, but yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, we'll go to our comments and communications section. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? No, okay. Are there any comments from board trustees?
A few of us were at the graduation for community high, and talking about achievement, I just was really blown away by some students at community high. They named a valedictorian for their class. Her name was Rita. She came here 2 years ago from Pakistan alone. Her mother had passed away, and she was coming to live with a friend of her mother's, speaking no English and having not gone to any formal school. She gave an address at the graduation that was unbelievable, and she won at least 3 scholarships from various groups from KBCC. That girl is on fire, that she was able to accomplish what she did in a 2-year period is just unbelievable. So I think that many times people make a judgment about who a student is that attends community high, and they are not necessarily the people that we think they are. Just some tremendous work there by teachers, other people in the community to bring these kids along. Lots of achievement and lots of accomplishment there that was very, very impressive. So I just wanted to mention that for those of you who weren't able to be there, that it was quite something.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
So Randy, right, so many highlights this year, the graduations, the groundbreakings, so I will just underscore this. At today's Haverhill groundbreaking, there were, I don't know, more than 100 elementary students there, sitting on the ground. It's hot, there wasn't a cloud in the sky, for probably 20 minutes or longer. They were the best behaved kids I've ever seen. I was astounded, and it was noteworthy. So, great job, Haverhill students.
Thanks, Bo. Anyone else? Well, I just like to comment on the groundbreakings. The groundbreakings were really cool. They were well put together. It was great to have the student participation. And the thing I came away with is how grateful these teachers and staff are to have these new facilities. I mean, it just means the world to them. It doesn't happen a lot in someone's career, you know, that you're building 5 schools, but, and anyway, it was just great to see. It was just great to see. And then I wanted to comment on the IB ceremonies at both high schools. That is just amazing to see the graduates of Portage and to see what course of study they're going to pursue, and how grateful they were to their teachers to getting them to this point. I mean, they're just some outstanding young people, and I think we're going to hear about those people in the future. Very impressive. So, and I guess that's all I have. Yes, sir.
Well, Randy, and at the IB ceremonies, the titles of their projects were read like doctoral thesis work. So
yeah, I didn't know what any of them were.
Yeah.
When they didn't say anything, did they say anything this year about anyone who wrote their 400 or 40,000 word essay in Spanish or some other language? That's happened before, and I always cannot believe it when that happens.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move forward to our consent agenda. And we have two items on the consent agenda tonight. First is minutes from the May 22nd, 2023 Policy Governance Retreat and the regular business meeting, and a bus purchase to approve the purchase of 4 77-passenger buses and 1 lift bus from Holland Bus for a total of $660,904, the funds for which will come from the 2019 Bond Fund Proposal Number 1, unallocated contingency. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. And now we'll move to assurance of district performance on page 33. Monitoring report 1.0 ends. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Board of Education accept as presented the monitoring report on 1.0 ends as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Terry.
So monitoring report 1.0 is I kind of look at it as a index to all of the reports that you've received during the course of the year on monitoring report 1.0. Those 5 reports that are presented make up at least 60 data points that serve as evidence of compliance with your end statement. So there's nothing that you in here that you haven't heard of, but then it gives you a glossary, index of the reports that were presented. Answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions from Mark? As he said, we've already seen them all. So. Okay.
And when we get this report, it means that the next cycle is soon to begin. So
Correct.
we'll see you in October, and it starts in April.
Correct. Okay then, all in favor of approving monitoring report 1.0, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Thank you, the motion passes, and we'll now move to monitoring report 2.0, global executive constraint on page 40. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Education accept as presented the monitoring report on 2.0 global executive constraint with a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Bo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Terry.
Again, very similar to the previous monitoring report. It's pretty much a series of statements here that pick up on a few words that aren't addressed through other policies, but basically says that all of the 2.0 policies have been reported on and accepted by the board throughout the course of the year, and ends this reporting cycle, and which will begin again in September of next year. So the policies, just an assurance that the policies that we have are out there in the hands of the people that use them. We have additional administrative guidelines that we create for some of them to give more detail behind them, and again, those are distributed in the hands of the people who implement them.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mark? Okay then, all those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.0, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The monitoring report 2.0 is approved. And now we're moving to our only required action item this evening, and that's the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership renewal. That's on page 45. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the 2023-24 Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution as presented.
Thank you, Emily. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ian.
Again, this is a routine annual resolution that for our high schools and our middle schools to participate in athletic contests that are sponsored by MHSAA. There is no cost to join. We agree to follow and abide by the MHSAA rules, and again, pretty routine. We report our enrollment every year so that it determines which class, which category we compete in with other schools. So that's all this is.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership renewal, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. The Athletic Association membership renewal is approved. We're now moving to our action item, and the first is new administrator appointments on page 49.
And we have, I don't know if you want to do a motion first, if you want to get a presentation.
Wow, it just motioned out. Let's get a...
All right. All right, Brad.
All right, I'll give you a little break here, Randy. So, thank you, trustees, Superintendent Beeling. Thank you. Glad to be here in front of you with a couple of recommendations for new administrators. And both of them are in the room tonight, so I will have them stand, and they will each give you a 10-minute bio. No, I'm just kidding. But I will have them each stand and acknowledge. First is Miss Abby DeVisser. Abby's joining us from Van Buren County ISD as a new special education supervisor for us. So I think as all of you know, Portage is the fiscal agent and overseer of all of the southern service area of KRESA. So we supervise, Dr. Matson Gerhardt supervises not only special education services here in Portage, but also Vicksburg and Schoolcraft. And Ms. DeVisser is going to be joining us with a primary focus in Schoolcraft, where she lives and her kids go to school. But we'll also be taking on some other responsibilities as Dr. Matson Gerhardt works her magic with the ESI team and everything there. So we're thrilled to have Abby here, not only with a good special education background, but also even an early special education background as well. So thrilled to have Abby here joining us as part of our administrative team. And then second, I have Miss Jessica Buckland here. So Jessica's joining us as our new Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, and she's going to be focused on grades 9 through 12. As we've gone through our entire process, and as you just heard Dr. Pasco and Dr. Jensenius, we have a lot of curriculum stuff going on right now. So as we went through our process, we realized that it really was a big job for one person. So I'm bringing Jessica to you as our brand new Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, focusing on 9-12. And also happy to have Dr. Sheehan going to be joining us as our, well, not joining us, taking on some additional responsibilities as the Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, focused on K-8 as well. She will be brought as part of our, since she's already administrator with the district, she'll be brought as part of our broader administrative renewals, which will be coming next meeting as well. So we'll have her in that. But so they are going to be partnering and tag teaming that beast that is the curriculum of the Portage Public Schools. So we're thrilled to have that. Jessica's coming to us from the Jackson ISD right now, where she supervises, works with how many? 14 or
17.
17 districts. So we figure now 14 buildings will be less chaotic there. And then focusing just on 3 high schools, even better than that. So we're thrilled to have Jessica joining us as well. So I'll be happy to take any questions as we move forward with these. And then just for in preview, to give Randy a little bit more of a break, I will be back up in front of you next meeting as well with the final, what I hope is the final administrative recommendation. I know Dr. Matson Gerhardt is working through her process, and we will also have our new assistant principal for Northern High School, where I have a verbal acceptance. I do not have it in writing yet, so you don't get to hear about it yet. So.
Thank you, Brad. That was great.
There you go.
I think these people sound great. I think we ought to make a motion and hire these folks. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would be honored to make the motion that the Board of Education approve the administrator appointment recommendations as presented. Ms. Abby DeVisser as Special Education Supervisor for the Southern Service Area of KRESA, and Ms. Jessica Buckland as Director of Curriculum and Professional Development.
Thank you. Second? All right. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the new administrator appointments, please say aye. 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 Opposed? The motion passes and the new administrator appointments are approved. Welcome to Portage Public Schools and congratulations on your promotion, Mackenzie. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Emily.
Oh, Emily did, okay. I didn't have it in my notes.
Very good. Okay, we'll move to our new teacher appointments. And I'm looking for somebody to make this motion. Thank you.
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education approve the appointment of the following teachers for Portage Public Schools. Deanna Russell as band teacher, Central High School and Central Middle School. Erin Warfield, social studies teacher, Northern High School. Jacqueline Pattison, kindergarten teacher, Morrisbridge Elementary. Caitlin Flesher, math teacher, Central Middle School. Joseph Weber, English teacher, Northern High School. Megan Brandenburg, ELL teacher. Haley Croughton, Young Fives teacher, Woodland Elementary. Windsor Demore, science teacher, Central Middle School. Cassidy Elliott, Young Fives teacher, 12th Street Elementary. Ondina Glasser, 5th grade teacher, Haverhill Elementary. Adeline Pung, Young Fives teacher, Amberley Elementary. Gabriel Rhodes, 5th grade teacher, Lake Center Elementary. Douglas Schaefer, ESI teacher, Haverhill Elementary. Christine Hobson, math teacher, West Middle School. Holly Bishop, math science teacher, West Middle School. Jessica Zessiger, biology chemistry teacher, Central High. Jamie Hatfield, 3rd grade teacher, Central Elementary. Nicole Brugema, math teacher, Central Middle School. Joyce Cuxey, art teacher, Central Elementary. Jennifer Pike, social studies teacher, West Middle School. Melinda Flickinger, health PE teacher, Central High School. Melissa Jorgensen, Title I teacher. Madison Losey, social studies teacher, West Middle School.
Nicely done, Terry, thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Kimberly? Brad?
Thank you. This is a little earlier than we have typically done it, but one of the tasks this year, and as we worked with our principals, was trying to get a lot of our hiring done early. Part of that is because teachers are getting harder to hire. We wanted to be kind of first on the list for a lot of these folks. So we're bringing these folks to you earlier than we normally do. There are 23 fabulous teachers on here. I will have additional teachers as we continue to move on, but I'm hoping this should be the bulk of our teacher hires this year. Again, you'll see a lot of great experienced teachers coming out of that, and also some teachers that we're familiar with, people who were parapros for us. Gabriel at Lake Center, 5th grade. He's actually going to be teaching in the classroom that he is student teaching, that he's been student teaching in this year, and so it's just kind of a seamless transition. In fact, I was joking with his supervising teacher who is retiring this year. You're just leaving all your stuff, right? And I don't think she thought I was joking. I think, yes, I'm leaving it all. You can have it. So the best of both worlds, certainly for that. So excited about this group of folks, and I'll be bringing further to you in July and or August.
Thank you, Brad. Any discussion? All those in favor of the new teacher appointments, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The new teacher appointments are approved, and our final action item tonight is revisions to policy 6320 on page 55. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the revisions to policy 6320 as presented.
Thank you, Ian. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I mentioned this last time when it was brought for a discussion item, and I don't think I fully answered the question and the implications of the changes of this. So I wanted to make sure this was brought back to the board so you understand that there might be some adjustments in what you see on some of our bidding processes, because it does change that a little bit. So Sammy Stevens is here just to give you the highlights of what the changes are in this so you're fully aware.
Good evening. So we are just bringing this to you to notify you of a slight change that we're making to the purchasing process that we currently follow. Right now, we just really are looking to change that requirement from 3 bids to 2, well, not bids, but price quotes on when the purchase is above 50% of the current state threshold. And a lot of that reason is because right now it's becoming really hard for us to find multiple vendors that carry the item that we're looking for, because like with curriculum, for example, things are becoming very, very specific. So like certain companies are the only ones that carry those items. So by changing this from 3 to 2, it kind of lessens the stress of trying to find the 3, but also pushes us to still find another quote. And the other thing is we're looking for reliable vendors. So with the 3, we're not sure. So just looking for that. And this has been reviewed by legal. So we've gone through those steps as well.
So that's the primary change, in addition to, giving us greater latitude on what is considered a cooperative purchase. There's some additional allowances that the law allows that wasn't captured in our previous policy. So this brings us up to date. It's very similar to what other districts are using through changes that they've made.
Yeah, it's recommended by Neola, right?
There were some changes that were recommended by Neola, and then there were some that we looked at other policies, K-RISA policy that we looked at as well, and then ran it by legal counsel to make sure, not Neola's legal counsel, but our other legal counsel.
Yep.
To take a look at, and they were in full agreement.
That's exactly what K-RISA did. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will be just like Mike.
Right.
Right.
Who is our legal counsel?
Troon Law Firm. And then we also use
Miller Canfield.
Miller Canfield in this particular case. But yeah, that Miller handles a lot of our financial, and we also use, who are we using for special ed?
I know you're going to ask me. Clark Hill.
Clark Hill for special ed. But Troon is our primary legal counsel, but for other matters, we use the other two.
Any other comments or discussion on this one? All in favor of approving revisions to policy 6320, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and policy 6320 is approved. We're now moving for a discussion item, and the first item is 2022-23 final budget amendment.
Paula is going to do this, take us into the last hour of the meeting.
The hockey game starts soon. Okay. Good evening, Board of Ed and Superintendent Beeling. Tonight, I'm bringing to you the Second Amendment for the General Fund and the First Amendments for our Building Site and Sinking Fund, the School Lunch Fund, and the School Services Fund. I want to apologize right now in advance. My PowerPoint presentation does not mirror the agenda to a T in order. So next year, I'll try to do better to have my presentation follow the items on the agenda properly. But everything's in here that you need, it's just not in the chronological order that it's listed on the agenda, so I apologize in advance.
I hope you can do better.
Always room for improvement.
Continuous.
Okay, I'm going to start tonight with the smaller funds, what I consider to be the smaller funds, our general fund being our largest, but we do have a debt retirement fund. And that debt retirement fund was made a common debt retirement fund last year at this time. We did have 4 individual debt funds that made 4 individual payments twice a year and collected tax levies that were split between 4 different funds, and it just streamlined everything to put it all together into one fund. So now we have a common debt retirement fund. And we are projecting to end the year, this year, a decrease in our fund balance of approximately $1.4 million. I don't want anybody to be concerned about that. That was planned in the process of our calculations. You're only allowed by law a certain percentage of your overall payments to be held in your fund balance for your debt retirement fund. So this is something that is monitored very closely by Treasury. I have to submit a report at the end of every calendar year for this, and so it was a planned decrease in fund balance. We levied 6.85 mils on the debt fund. Moving forward to our building site and sinking fund, we're projected to end the year with a slight decrease in fund balance of about $336,000. We're taking on some different projects in this building site and sinking fund now than what we've done in the past. We've done some gym floor refinishings in some locations included in the memo. Just to let you know, we are also planning on, we're putting in the parking lot at Northern High School AE&F facility, and then we're also working on the curtain wall facelift project at Northern High. So there's a lot of improvement things happening in that building site and sinking fund. This is the first time since I've been at the district now, going on year 7, where we've actually put the money, we've spent just about everything that we've received. So, because we've always been so heavy in construction. So usually the construction was priority, but now we're kind of in between construction projects. Well, they're starting to gear up, but we had a good opportunity to use some of the funds. We're levying 0.4988 mils on that fund, and this is our third year of being in a Headley rollback situation. We took that to the voters as a $500,000, and due to the calculations, I'll go into Headley a little bit more on the general fund side. It's the same concept, but as taxable values increase at a faster rate than inflation, it causes us to have to roll back our millage levy. So we are currently levying 0.4988 mils on the building site and sinking fund. Moving forward to the school service fund, this is the fund that holds our food service fund, our bookstore fund, and our school activities fund. Our food service fund, we're projected to end the year with an increase in our fund balance of approximately $452,000, sorry. My glasses are for close up, not far away. And we currently have submitted a plan to Michigan Department of Ed. We have an excess fund balance situation in our food service fund. That was what happened with the free breakfast and lunch servings in the previous fiscal year. So we have to submit a plan to MDE for approval for that. And I believe it's on my calendar that we should hear something by next week, but I don't know if that's really what's going to happen. So
It's Thursday.
So that's what we're working on there. Our bookstore fund, we have a bookstore fund at both high schools, Northern High and Central High, and what happens on that fund is revenues end up matching expenditures at year end because the clubs that are putting on the bookstore and heading up the activities and the work related to the bookstore receive the net proceeds that happen. So that doesn't hold a fund balance. So at year end, the money gets contributed to either DECA or the other one's leaving my mind right now, so I apologize. The school activities fund is what we used to refer to prior to GASB 84 as our internal fund, and that's where the clubs and some of the school, like the school drama and those kind of things, National Honor Society and whatnot, will have an account where money is held there for them to use. And we're projected to end the year, if my projections are correct, we might be adding some to fund balance, about $165,000 overall. That one's hard to project until everything's in, once we get into June. I'm now going to turn it over to Sammy, and she's going to cover some of the highlights of the general fund for this amendment. So tonight we also bring to you the general fund amendment number 2, the first one we brought to you in February. So since February, we've updated some revenues, especially on the one-time federal grants that include ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. We've updated those to match what has been approved by MDE, along with what's been spent year to date and what we plan to spend going forward through June 30. All have been approved by MDE as well. The other thing that we've updated is the state categoricals, and in your financial packet you'll see that your state revenues made a huge jump, and a lot of that is due to these 3 sections. So we've got the 147C2, and that is a one-time payment made to the district for MIPSPERS, which it helps spend down the unfunded liability at ORS, and so that's received through the state. We started receiving that in March. It'll have a $0 net effect on the bottom line, but this whole amount of just over $5.4 million will be received in the 22-23 school year, so you won't see it in the preliminary budget next year, or next meeting. Also updated was Section 97, Safety and Security. I know you guys have heard a lot about that from Michael and his team. So there was a small amount included in the first amendment, but in the second amendment, we've kind of been able to expense some of that money and start growing. So we've been pulling that revenue back and forth. Also included is Section 31AA, which is Mental Health Services and Programs. That's also, again, a state categorical. Received through state aid. We started receiving that in February, and that award is just over $1 million and has to be spent by 9/30 of '24. On to expenses. Starting in mid-April, we met with department heads to discuss their final expenses for 22-23. And then we also worked to pull a report on the remaining payroll and benefits, and we forecasted that out through the end of the year, and that includes the accruals so for the time that's worked after prior to June 30, but paid after July 1, we'll have to accrue that back. So these expenses bring that into effect, effect. We also analyzed the district sub-accounts. Subbing costs are still up, so we really looked at those accounts and went more off of current year trend on where we want those budgets to look. We have updated both the federal and the state grants. We adjusted those as needed, again, with approval from MDE. We added 11T, which is approximately $3.5 million, and we have spoken about that. And so we moved about $3.5 million from the general fund to the 11T grant, and that will be committed once approved at the 6 and 19 meeting. We also added in 147C2. That is, again, the MIPSPers, and they are doing that. It has to flow through the district. So we get the money, we pay it back out that same month. So it's just a straight flow through, no effect to the bottom line. And that is the majority of that retirement increase that you see in your financial report as well. We looked at utilities and just updated those based off current year trends. And then we also had to implement GASB 96, which is the software-based IT agreement, or SPITA for short. There's no change in expenses for this. It's just strictly a reclass of software programs that the district purchases, like curriculum programs. So that's that increase in the debt area between Amendment 1 and Amendment 2 is specifically that reclass of those programs that we use as a district. So this chart here just gives you an overview of where we actually ended last fiscal year, June 30th, 2022, where revenues exceeded expenditures, and our ending unassigned fund balance was the 13.77%. Amendment number 1 that we brought you in February projected that expenses would exceed revenues by about $649,000, leaving us with a projected ending fund balance of 12.66%. Now, at amendment times, this is a best guess scenario, and I've gone over this with the board. We won't know what actual final percentages are until we actually close the books this summer before the auditors come. So the amendment that we're bringing you tonight shows revenues exceeding expenditures in the amount of $2,897,675. But included in this overage is the committed 11T money that then would be subtracted off of that overage, where we really display, and this chart doesn't do a good job, and I will do a better job at the next meeting, I apologize. After the committed funds are implemented, it would technically show that expenses exceed revenues by approximately $688,000, which is about a $40,000 change from amendment number 1 that we brought you in February. Overall, on a $121 million budget, $40,000, we did so much work, and we look at the bottom line and we're like, $40,000 for over a month's work? We must have done a really good amendment in February. So taking all of that into consideration and committing the 11T money would project our unassigned fund balance to be at 11.80%, which still exceeds the board policy at 7%. So that's just a high-level overview of what amendment number 2 in the general fund is going to give you once the 11T funds are committed. Are there any questions right now about amendment 2 in the general fund or any of the other funds before we move forward with planning on 23-24? Okay. Tonight, I want to bring to you my assumptions and the things that we are facing as we're putting together the 23-24 preliminary budget. You will see before next board meeting. And hopefully I can answer any questions that I possibly can. As you know, we still don't know what funding is. Governor came out with her projected funding for next year in February. Her executive budget recommended a $458 increase, or the per pupil foundation allowance would be $9,608. That was her recommendation. House and Senate followed, well, not really quickly, but thereafter. The House recommended a $366 per pupil increase, or a funding level of $9,516. But the Senate came in and said, well, we want to suggest an increase of $550 per pupil, and we would make, the funding would be $9,700 per student. We each, the governor and the House and the Senate, the House and Senate have each passed their own budgets, and now they've exchanged and gone to, cross chamber, and now they're going to work through conference committee, and they're currently in conference committee working out their differences. The Democrats have proposed to spend down the extra money that's currently sitting in the state school aid fund, but Republicans are a little more cautious, and they don't want to have every dollar spent. They want to set some money aside, so they're trying to negotiate and work through those differences currently. They are positively optimistic that they will pass that before the end of June, but as you all know, we are required that we have to pass our budget by July 1. So obviously, the House and the Senate, they're using the numbers from the CREC, and the state school aid fund came in just a little bit higher than what they had originally projected, but the general fund revenue targets are coming in lower. But the state school aid fund is what funds our monthly state aid payments for our per pupil allocation. So it's a hurry up and wait game, and I get to make my best guess for the budget. I showed you this chart last year, and there are some new faces on the board, so I just want to take a moment to explain to you what are the revenue sources that actually come into the state school aid fund that actually then are sent back out to the school districts in the state of Michigan. Things such as sales tax, liquor tax, casino, use tax, lottery, state education tax. All of those things funnel into the state school aid fund so that it can be turned around and sent back out to districts on that monthly basis, except for the month of September when we don't receive a state school aid payment. So as they're looking at targets overall in the CREC, they're looking at these categories to see how well are they hitting those targets that they set overall for themselves, to tell us how strong the balance sheet looks for the state school aid fund. So I'm sharing with you tonight what I believe are my current predictions of what I've built into the budget. I've done some preliminary revenue calculations. I'm feeling safe because there is such a difference in each of the numbers for right now, going a conservative route of $400 per pupil. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it comes in more. But I don't want to put myself on the hook for more than that and then have it come in below. Last year I hit it, and I don't know if I can get it right 2 years in a row. I do a external, I have an external enrollment projection completed by Stanford, and he is predicting that our enrollment will be down. Janet Johnstone does a phenomenal job of putting together an enrollment projection for our district, and I've used those enrollment projections for the past 4 years, and they've been very accurate. So I'm going with Janet's most latest enrollment projection, and if I use her number overall to blend on a 90-10 basis, and one of the budgets recommends that we change the funding formula, but I'm still sticking with the 90-10 for right now. Using the internal enrollment projection that we have, I'm showing that we would be down 102 students overall in our blended number for our state aid payments. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that, you know, enrollments will still come in over the summer and this number is too low. But I'm going to currently right now, you know, build that budget on a blended number of 8,592 students. We do not know what our retirement rate is for next year. The governor put rates in her executive budget, but they also gave recommendation for a categorical that they haven't shared any dollar amounts with us yet as to what it would be to help offset the increase in the governor's proposed increase on retirement. I do not feel comfortable putting a number in my budget unless I know it's a pretty solid number that we're gonna get it, because then my expense could be overstated, my revenue could be overstated. So I don't have a good handle yet on if that categorical is really going to fund us for the majority of the increase on the retirement rate. I've taken into consideration insurance rates that we currently know that will encompass the budget for half of the year, July through December. Taking into consideration anybody that doesn't fall under an insurance cap, anybody that's not under the insurance cap calculation, I threw a dart at the wall with a little bit of Brad's help, and we planned on a 7% increase. We are currently negotiating, as Brad had mentioned, 2 unsettled contracts, one with our teachers and the other with our custodial group. I will put in an increase for those. I don't know if I'll be spot on with that, but I will plan for an increase. One thing I do want to bring to the board is we are a Headley rollback district, and that has been that way since I started in 2017. I think 2016 was the first year that Portage experienced a rollback. And what that means is we do not levy the full 18 mills to our non-homestead entities out in the district. They pay 17.5695 mills, and that happens when our property tax values increase beyond the rate of inflation. We are not rolling back any further for next year, but I would imagine eventually there's going to come a point in time in the calculation where we will roll back more than what we've rolled now. But for right now, we're going to stay at the 17.5695 for the 23-24 school year. But what this means is we lose out on approximately $387,000 worth of funding. And the only way to restore that funding is to go back to the voters and ask for approval to levy beyond the 18 because of the Headley rollback. Gull Lake had that recently on their proposal in May, and it did not pass. I am not including pay to participate fees for the high school or middle school in next year's budget. The KRESA special education millage is under a 6-year term, and that will expire 12/31 of 26. The enhancement millage was passed this past May for a 6-year term. We will be including revenue in the budget for that, and that will run through 12/31 of 28. And we've set the budget hearing for 2 weeks from tonight at 6:30. Our building site and sinking fund, that's been approved by the voters through December of 2024. That is experiencing a Headley rollback as well. It's not rolling back any further. It's staying at the .4988 mils, as mentioned when I spoke to you about Amendment 1 for building site and sinking fund. We are using these funds district-wide. A listing of all of the projects was included in the resolution for the amendment, and there will be a few items new listed for the new year budget, such as a roof at 12th Street Elementary, and the parking lot project is going to cross fiscal years at Northern High, and the facelift is going to cross fiscal years. So you're going to see some of the expense in 22-23 and some of it in 23-24. That's just a timing of when the work can be done. The food service fund, all 3 budget recommendations so far for Executive, House, and Senate have recommended that breakfast and lunch offerings will be free for next year. That has not passed yet, but all signs point in that favor. That's why we've not brought school lunch pricing to you yet until we kind of see what happens. if it doesn't come through as being free, we are planning in that budget, at least for any reduced meal student, would still be free for next year.
Would that be a universal breakfast, lunch, or no? What do you mean by that? By free breakfast and lunch, is that just for what we have normally?
That the free breakfast and lunch would be similar to how the operations ran when we were under COVID.
Okay.
And it was offered to all.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to do in the current budgets currently. Okay. But if that is not approved as part of our spend down budget plan, we still plan to offer free breakfast and lunch to any of our reduced meal students. We're still waiting on guidance from MDE regarding the meal application process and what that will look like if servings do end up being free for next year, because there will still be a requirement to collect that data. And we're currently working on sending out bids for new equipment purchases to spend down that excess fund balance in the food service fund, because we have to have it spent down by a certain time. On the debt fund, in that common debt fund, we're gonna still plan to levy the 6.85 mils next year. There'll be no change there. And that will include the new, the 2023 bond issue that we will receive proceeds for here 22nd of June. To that. And then finally, this slide just shows you the history of what our unassigned fund balance looks like from a final aspect of the end of each fiscal year. And then for the 22-23 year, based on our projected amendment number 2, that we would end at 11.80% of expenditures of unassigned fund balance. Are there any questions right now? It's a lot to take in, so we apologize.
Doing great. You're doing awesome with what you have to work with. So. Not bad. Need the number. So, yeah.
Would fund balance for 23-24 be similar, in line with what you just showed us for us ending this fiscal year?
I am predicting, now granted we don't have all the numbers in our spreadsheet for the budget for next year. We are hoping to make huge progress with that tomorrow and the next day.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
If we are going to possibly have 100 less students in our blended enrollment times $9,500, I mean, you're looking at, it's going to be a lot less revenue, and I think expenses are going to be higher.
You'll have the answer in 2 weeks.
Less than 2 weeks. We want to share it with you well before. We want to share it with you well before. But that's going to be I feel that this is a worst case scenario proposal for you, and hopefully that at amendment time, that'll give us the opportunity to true everything up or update the board based on what the final budget is, how that changes my enrollment my revenue projection for foundation allowance. Once we have that October count and we know what the budget is, I can inform the board of, well, this is going to be the variance on the state aid based on those 2 key factors.
Yeah, you're forced to make a lot of plugs and assumptions now, but that all gets trued up in the amendment.
I pull out my crystal ball.
Yeah.
And they're really hoping to have that budget passed by the end of June, but there's been no movement, so we'll see what happens.
Well, thank you for your presentation. You gave us a real accurate picture of where we are.
I just want to thank these two because they're working on a really tight schedule. Our board meetings in June are a week earlier than they were last year, so it's really put a crunch at a very difficult time of the year anyway, as we're ending the school year. So thank you for all your extra work.
We appreciate the board being accommodating to where we can focus the majority of our thoughts to do a very thorough Second Amendment on the general fund and those First Amendments on those smaller funds for you, and then have everything in place. We've got all of our spreadsheets ready to go. We just have to start dropping numbers in for 23, 24. So.
You manage so much. I appreciate you, Tim.
It's a challenge. Yeah, that it is. It's a fun one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item is the resolution authorizing restriction of funds.
Paul, you're still up.
I'm still up. Tonight, I'm bringing to the board a recommendation that we pass a resolution at the June 19th board meeting to commit 11T funding that the district was able to utilize in our general fund. It relates to a presentation that Mike Huber and I brought to the board last August to help give student support through federal funds, and we would like to use these funds to help students maximize supports and instruction for their essential learning and well-being. So by the board committing these funds, we can help our students excel. And so I wrote a pretty long memo in the board packet explaining how the funds would be tracked internally, similar to a grant, so to speak. So we would update the committed funds at each year end and revise it on the financials appropriately. It's go to the board at amendment time. So just to keep it short and sweet, that's the gist of it. Any questions?
I think a really important sentence here comes down at the end, and that these funds, when originally received, had an expiration date on them, thou shalt spend by.
Correct.
And what we're saying is, we'd rather not come up with plans in a rushed manner, but be more thoughtful and put those dollars in a special fund where we have more time to use them and more time to thoughtfully plan, and this is about learning and operating.
They will live in our general fund, but we will analyze and track them separately as a grant. So, but yes, it does give us longer to spend it, and 11T allows you to supplant current expenditures for this one-time money. So this money, we will not receive 11T money again. We still have a small piece of 11T left to spend for summer school and after-school activities, but it has to be spent based on certain criteria for students. So it's a very analytical process to be able to use the money.
Any other questions for Paul or comments? Thank you, Paula. You can sit down now.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item is the custodial services contract extension.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve a 2-year contract extension of our custodial services contract with the Grand Rapids Building Services, or GRBS, for the custodial services in the amount of $2.2 million per year, 23-24 and the 24-25 school years. GRBS has been a provider in multiple areas, including educational, medical, corporate, and manufacturing facilities throughout the state of Michigan. And we've been in a partnership with them for over 13 years. We will continue our current hybrid staffing model, which includes that our PPS custodians will provide cleaning services during the first shift, and GRBS will handle second and third shifts. Now, GRBS provides an assistant middle school position during the first shift at each of our 3 middle schools, and all custodial services in the second and third. Now, one significant change is the reduction of 2 of the 3 middle school first shift assistants out of the GRBS contract. With that cost savings and the cost savings of reducing a maintenance position as remain unfilled, with this change, we will be able to convert or add 2 first shift middle school assistant positions, custodial positions, to our Portage Public Schools Custodial Maintenance Association, beginning with the 23-24 school year. Furthermore, the contract was a higher starting wage for GRBS employees and an increase in the number of GRBS positions working during the summer. Also in your packet is just an addendum summary summarizing some of the things related to the addendum to the contract. I will be happy to answer any questions of the board as it relates to this recommended 2-year extension.
Any questions? Any comments?
This is a contract that the board has asked questions on in the past, and maybe a year or longer ago, you gave us a special presentation on it, trying to weigh the quality versus cost implications, and you've continued to tweak this. And so you're continuing to look at it and try to bring us the best mix of PBS employee versus GRBS.
Absolutely correct. Last year, well, first of all, last year we did a 10-month contract, which put us on the fiscal years because our contract with GRBS crossed 2 fiscal years, so we were able to do that last year. Another thing that we were able to do last year, as our previous contract started pre-COVID, and so GRBS decided, rightfully so, to raise their wages even though our contract number remained the same. So that was an element of it. And then as we talked about quality versus quantity as well, we do know that our cost per employee for our PPS staff is substantially higher than a GRBS employee. So what we were able to do with this contract is to add 2 positions on our PPS side. In exchange of that, we're reducing 2 positions on the GRBS contract. And we've got a maintenance position that has remained unfilled. So this is really kind of a cost-neutral contract for us overall, looking at what we pay for custodial services through privatized services, then also what we pay our PPS employees. So it's one extra step towards adding a couple more positions into our union.
Anything else for John? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item is the MASB membership renewal. This is an annual renewal. Do you want to talk about it, or?
I mean, the information here is pretty self-explanatory. There is an added option to do a dues plus prepay of $2,000, which is a service that we don't feel you really need as far as creating a video for the district. Certainly have some capacity to do that ourselves, but you know, there are benefits to belonging in MASB. You know, more than just the fact that you belong. It also allows for some cost savings in insurance that more than pays for this. And yeah, I mean, the majority of the school districts in Michigan belong to MASB.
And they are a lobbying voice for districts.
Yes, they are.
In Lansing, and an important voice.
And our savings this past year was over $103,000 as a result of membership, so it's kind of a no-brainer. Are there any comments, discussion, or could we move on to the next item? Yes, okay. That would be the bylaw and policy revisions that we discussed at our retreat. And I'll just go through this quickly. The first is 0143.1, public expression of board members. We opted to change that language in point 3 to make that instead of thank you letters from the board from individual board members. There was consensus at our retreat that that's the direction we wanted to move in. The next one is 0154 motions on page 89, and we wanted to add an approval for attendance at workshops and conventions in accordance with the organizational meeting, so that the board would be approving those trips and expenses rather than the board president. And also add the fact that we approved board and district primary legal counsel at that organizational meeting as well. If anybody has any comments, just break in. It's,
Well, yeah, this is not one that was discussed, but it captures
Right.
the two additional things that we do at organizational meetings. So as long as we were bringing bylaw revisions, we wanted to make sure we caught those two items on here.
on page 90 is bylaw 0167.6, use of social media, and we agreed to change that at the retreat. We thought it'd be a good idea to refer to bylaw 0143.1, public expression of board members, and replace that with a board member shall comply with bylaw 0143.1, public expression of board members and all other board bylaws and policies when using social media. The next one is, we already talked about a little bit, is all 175.1, school board conferences, conventions, and workshops. And we wanted to bring this policy in compliance with revised school code that requires the board rather than the board president to approve these expenses. I won't go through all of this, but towards the bottom, if approved, the following are reimbursable upon submission of receipts and documentation. And we talked at the retreat about adding another line in there for instructional materials and reference materials to be reimbursed for that. That's a good thing. Everybody okay with that? Okay. And then finally, disposition of real property. This came up last year, and we're sort of bringing this to conclusion. We changed a few things. The definition of real property, we added that that definition is from the Code of Federal Regulations. The other parts that you see in green is different than what our old policy was. The district may transfer its property in exchange for value deemed fair by the board. Item D is the district may consider both solicited and unsolicited offers to transfer its property. The old policy referred to the finance committee who would review sales of real property, and we don't have a finance committee, so we thought a good substitute for that would be an ad hoc committee appointed by the board president. Other significant items are H, that requires the superintendent or designate to investigate any tax consequences of sale of district property. And also, item I gives the superintendent the authority to negotiate and execute transfer documents. And this policy was developed as a result of information we received from Troon as well as Miller Canfield. So this has been something the board's been working on for a while, just bringing it to conclusion. And finally, our Global Ends 1.0 policy titled Global Ends, that ends statement there. We wanted to make that more clear that these were long-term in nature, the ends. And we thought at the retreat that the phrase long-term outcomes was better than long-term priorities or long-term goals.
Was that the 15-minute debate about one word?
It was a long time.
Long range.
It was a long time.
Instead of term.
Yeah.
There is a corrected handout at your seat that shows that reflects the notes that Gary had put together that calls that long-range outcomes now. So that's the corrected change to that policy. Unless you choose to have another 15-minute discussion.
You want to do it tonight?
Yeah.
So if anyone has any concerns with any of these, let me know, but I think we've captured what we thought was a good idea at the retreat. Okay, we're going to move to our last discussion item, and that's the curriculum purchase. All right. Welcome, Mackenzie.
Thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Beeling and Board of Trustees. I get the honor of helping wrap tonight up with an exciting recommendation. Tonight I bring to you the recommendation for the Board of Education to approve the 23-24 school curriculum materials purchase that's new adoption materials and then any text version updates. So it will be next meeting that we bring the full breadth of what we have going on in the curriculum department, but tonight it's just the adoptions and the updates. You'll find the descriptions, prices, and background in your packets. There are 6 resources that we are asking you to approve for purchase. The first is Fish Tank Learning, which you heard a bit about last time and even tonight. This will be a K-8 English Language Arts core curriculum that we will be purchasing. And then the next one is UFly, which is also an ELA product, but it's just for K2. So it hits one of the buckets, so Fish Tank hits one and UFly fits the other. And that's explicit phoneme and phonics instruction. Then we have Great Minds PhD Science for just kindergarten and first grade. They have not adopted anything when 2nd grade through 5th grade did, and that's kind of detailed for you in the description around the science curriculum. And then moving into middle school, we will be updating the new version of Big Ideas Mathematics. So the version that we're currently using has sunsetted, and so we will be purchasing the new one and all the teacher and student resources that come with it. And then the high school advanced placement statistics. So we actually haven't replaced this version of this text since 2005. So it is about time that they were able to upgrade to the next version, and they will be getting their teacher materials along with 6 years of an online component, as well as hardcover textbooks. And then the last one is the High School International Baccalaureate version updates. Something that we do with IB is we make an agreement where when they go through their curricular cycle, that is much like ours, that we will then update our materials and our courses to match that. This past year, the sciences have gone through that curriculum cycle, and so this coming year, we will need to update the IB physics, chemistry, and biology textbooks and courses. So the total for these 6 purchases is $403,407.06. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
This is just a dumb question. Are there real textbooks in school right now, or is everything online?
Nope, we
like
have
middle
both. It depends probably on the subject area and what resource, but for the most part, we provide both options for students.
Just didn't know if I was getting old.
Oh, no, you're not. Not even close. No.
You told me there are no books. Wow, okay, got it, thank you.
Just to underscore, this is coming to us at the end of a long process.
Yes, sir.
Could you throw out a date as to when the initial thinking of this process began?
The elementary and middle school ELA has been on about a 2.5-year track coming to this point. As for the science, actually, that goes back to 2018-19, and then it was disrupted during the pandemic, and so we've come back around to finding a resource for them. As for middle school mathematics and the other version updates, it's that cycle of when those new versions have come out and what content is available in them, and those departments having long conversations over multiple years to decide that they need to move to the next one. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your memo and explanation of what's going on here. It's very thorough. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now know how to pronounce UFly. Thank you. We've reached the end of our agenda. We are adjourned. Please give me your monitoring report evaluation forms and your meeting evaluation forms. Thank you.
Fill it out during the meeting.
Oh, man. Shooting ahead.
Lovely dinner that I'm having.
Is that the committee?